This podcast is brought to you by the Maryland State Library Agency. The MSLA podcast features presenters from statewide youth programs, as well as learning opportunities for library staff and resources for patrons of the Maryland State Library for the Blind and Print Disabled.
The following is a presentation of the Technology User Group at the Maryland State Library for the Blind and Print Disabled. For more information about the Technology User Group, including upcoming sessions or archived recordings from previous sessions, please visit our website, lbpd.maryland.gov. That's L, B as in Bravo, P as in Paul, D as in Delta, .maryland.gov.
In Maryland's tech-savvy land of innovation, a group of minds with wisdom and elation. The Technology User Group, a shining light, bring knowledge to the people day and night. With meetings and events, they share their might. In forums and workshops, they ignite the passion for progress. They never tire and bring the future closer like a burning fire. Their expertise in tech, a treasure to behold, a wealth of knowledge young and old. From coding to AI, they dive and soar and make the complex simple once more. With every step, they pave the way for a brighter tomorrow today. In Maryland's tech scene, they shine so bright. The Technology User Group, a beacon of light. In Maryland's tech-savvy land of innovation, a group of minds with wisdom and elation. The Technology User Group, a shining light, bring knowledge to the people day and night. With meetings and events, they share their might. In forums and workshops, they ignite the passion for progress. They never tire and bring the future closer like a burning fire. Their expertise in tech, a treasure to behold, a wealth of knowledge young and old. From coding to AI, they dive and soar and make the complex simple once more. With every step, they pave the way for a brighter tomorrow today. In Maryland's tech scene, they shine so bright. The Technology User Group, a beacon of light.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Technology User Group. I am very pleased this morning to have with me Christine Ha, who you may know from her exploits on the MasterChef, and also someone who has a book that's in our current collection, and that we will talk about that a little bit later on. But I really am pleased to have Christine here with us to share her life with us in this very moment, to talk about her experiences and challenges along the way. Good morning, Christine. It's a pleasure to have you.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
I'll jump right in. Basically, there's three phases of this particular interview. We're going to talk about your blindness journey. As you know, all of us in this room are visually impaired, so it's, no big secret. We all have a story to tell, and so we all share in that journey. Talk about your MasterChef experiences and talk about what you're doing now and the many things that you are doing and all that sort of thing. So tell us about your blindness journey. Basically, what condition you have and when did you know and the progress and all that fun stuff.
So I was born with full vision. I didn't start losing my vision until I was 19 years old. I was in college at the time, and I experienced what is called optic neuritis. So for those of you who have experienced any visual changes or vision loss because of optic neuritis, you'll know that it is an inflammation of the optic nerve. So my eye works fine and my brain works fine, but the nerve that connects the eye to the brain is what is not functioning correctly. So the images that my eyes take in don't get processed by my brain correctly. So the optic neuritis turned out to affect both of my eyes gradually over time. I eventually was correctly diagnosed with something called neuromyelitis optica, or NMO for short. It is an autoimmune condition similar to multiple sclerosis. So it affects the optic nerves, the spinal cord, sometimes the brain, but basically it's an autoimmune condition that affects the neurological or nervous system. So that's how my vision loss began. It started only in one of my eyes, and the vision never returned completely in that one eye, but I was able to uh, acclimate to the vision loss in one eye, and I still went on about life with the remaining one good eye. So it affected my depth perception at first a little bit, but I was still driving. I could still read the board at school. And then a few years later, I experienced what started as tingliness or numbness in one of my legs. And that's when they decided, okay, this is a neurological disease. And fortunately, I've had many attacks on my spinal cord, but I've recovered from them. But my vision deteriorated over time because of the NMO. And the optic nerves, I think, were too sensitive to really bounce back and recover. So gradually in my 20s, for many years, I experienced vision loss. So it would just decrease over time, maybe get a little better again once I went on treatment, and then get worse again. So the baseline was slowly decreasing over many years. And now I describe my vision in medical terms. Medically speaking, I'm counting fingers in both eyes. But I would say for people who don't understand the medical jargon, I describe my vision as if I ask people to imagine if they were to get out of a really hot shower and gaze into the foggy or steamy mirror, that's what I see. So everything is very hazy, blurry. I see some color contrast, some shadows, but not a lot.
Was there anything, did they try to do anything to correct the issue, or was this an unoperable kind of situation?
The only thing that the doctors have told me was that I could go on intravenous steroids, corticosteroids, to help reduce the inflammation, which may or may not help with the actual recovery of the eyesight. So obviously for me, it perhaps preserves some of my vision because I don't see complete darkness. But there's no operation or no sort of therapy that can restore vision at this point that I know of.
So how quickly did you accept going blind?
I think it was really a back and forth thing because, my vision would get better, and then I would think, oh, maybe, this is really the new normal and it's not too bad because, I can still see some things. I just maybe couldn't drive anymore. And then it got to the point where I was like, oh, okay, now I can't drive, but I can still see um, the sidewalk. I could still see street curbs to walk around without any guidance. And then it got worse again. And then I was like, okay, well, now I need either a sighted guide or a white cane. Now I can no longer see large print font. I have to learn to read Braille. So it was a lot of back and forth. So I think each time it got worse, I definitely felt uh, disappointed, for sure, to say the least. And for me, mostly it was a lot of uncertainty, which I like to be a planner. I like to know what's ahead. So to not know whether my vision would continue to decrease, or if I would be blind forever, how much vision loss would I experience? All the unknowns, I think, were more terrifying for me than the actual vision loss itself. So now I'm happy to say that the doctors have found a successful treatment for me where my vision has been stable for quite a long time, over a decade. And for me now, vision loss is just a natural part of my life, as I'm sure it is for many of you. And we always say, it is a big part of me, but it doesn't define who I am as a whole person.
When you were going through this transition, did you actually know anyone that was blind or had a visual impairment before you went through your experience?
Not anyone that was close. I had like a classmate back when I was in middle school who was also visually impaired. So he had like the big Perkins brailler that he would take notes on in class. And he knew how to obviously read Braille, and he had a person guide him around from, to go to his classes. But I only knew him as a classmate. We weren't close friends or anything. And after that, I really didn't know anyone who's visually impaired until I started experiencing it myself.
When did you start getting training, and what types of training did you have?
After I was told that my vision loss would be permanent, I looked into what opportunities or training there uh, was available in Texas, and I was found out that Texas actually has a very robust program for adults who are experiencing vision loss for them to get back on their feet. So I applied to the program and received orientation, mobility training, technology training, all of the technology and equipment I needed to continue life as is. And, my vision was still gradually getting worse. So at first it was like getting magnifiers or getting a little portable CCTV. And then eventually I had to learn to read Braille. But I jumped on all of these things and opportunities fairly quickly because I knew that if this was going to be a permanent state of life for me, then I had to learn to adapt very quickly to continue living life to my fullest, regardless of whatever challenges or vision loss I had that lay ahead of me.
Were there any particular gadgets in the back in the early days that you particularly enjoyed using?
Something I still find very important, and I actually need to get a new one because mine is not functioning so well right now because I've used it so much, is a liquid level indicator. And I didn't realize how important this is until I was like, how do blind or low vision people pour hot coffee or hot boiling water into something? Like, if it's cold water, you can use your finger to measure it or feel where the top of the cup is. But if it's hot water, you can't really do that. So I find the liquid level indicator something that's very important.
Awesome. And then we move into the next chapter. So you're going through all this, and yet I guess this is the part that really fascinates, right? You're going through all these challenges with your vision, but yet somehow you get talked into doing MasterChef. And so tell me what MasterChef was like.
Yeah, MasterChef really came about by happenstance. I was in creative writing school at the time. After I'd lost my vision, I decided to do a complete career change. And instead of continuing to work with something that had to do with my business degree and my undergraduate studies, I decided to do a 180 and get a master's degree in creative writing because stories and the art of storytelling and creative writing and books, these were all things that I loved growing up, but not something that I took seriously because my parents, who were immigrant parents, were always telling me, like, you need to become a doctor or a lawyer or someone that makes a lot of money so you can be independent. So that was their hope and their priority for me. So I just assumed that a life in the arts was not something that I should consider seriously. But after going through all of my health issues and the vision loss, my family finally told me and gave me the blessing and said, you know what, as long as you're healthy and you're happy, do what you want to do. So I decided to pursue another side of things that I love, which was creative writing. And it wasn't until my last semester in creative writing school, when I was supposed to be writing my thesis and then defending it at the end of the semester, I had the opportunity to audition for MasterChef. So, at the encouragement of my friends and my family, they said, you should totally do this because America needs to see how a visually impaired person can still cook really well. And I really went off to audition and to go on the show thinking, oh, well, maybe I'll have a great story to write about when I come back to school. So I didn't go with the purpose or the intention to really win. I just wanted to go for the experience and perhaps learn about cooking, see what life is like working in Hollywood. And, but I'm naturally a very competitive person as well. And I'm a perfectionist, so I always try to do my best in all the challenges. And of course, the rest was actually history, and I ended up winning that entire season.
So what were the biggest challenges that you faced doing the show? And I saw a couple of your interviews where you talked about the different competitions. So that was very interesting.
Yeah, the biggest challenges were always, one was doubt from other people, doubt from self-doubt myself, just in thinking, like, can I really compete with this disability? I think the other challenge, when you think about what we had to go through on that show, was all of the field challenges. And those were the challenges that took us out of the MasterChef kitchen and, into an environment that's brand new. So we're cooking on the beach or on a farm or in someone's restaurant. So as you know, being visually impaired, there's a lot of things that we have to go through to orient ourselves to a new environment. So suddenly I would be thrown in a new environment and I have to learn a new kitchen, a new appliance, where things are, location, and commit everything to memory as quickly as I could in order to compete in the challenge. So I would say those field challenges that took me out of the comfort of my own MasterChef kitchen station were the most difficult.
Kind of accommodation did they give you being on the show?
The producers were great. They wanted to make sure that the playing field was level and it was fair, but not necessarily give me an advantage. So I told them about all of the possible adaptations that visually impaired people use in their own home kitchen. So they got all of those tools for me. So, for example, they put raised bump dot stickers on the stove knobs for me. They taped off the edges of my station with a textured tape so that I could feel the edges easily and not push my olive oil off the station. They gave me talking thermometers, talking measuring cups. And the most important thing is they actually provided me a sighted guide, but they placed very strict rules on us. So she was able to guide me to the pantry and describe me like all of the ingredients. And then I could ask her like, oh, grab me the all-purpose flour. But she could not cut my food, taste my food, touch my food as I'm cooking it. And for example, we had to think of it as though she were an extension of me. So if I were in the middle of cooking at my station and I needed like a stand mixer, normally a sighted person would just run off to the pantry themselves and get the stand mixer. But for me, I wouldn't be able to find it as quickly. So I could ask her, but if she went to the pantry to get me the stand mixer, I have to step back from the station and not touch anything, even if it was on fire, even if something was burning, even if it was boiling over, I wasn't allowed to touch it because essentially it's as though I were in the pantry getting something. So I shouldn't be at my station able to cook. So there were all sorts of rules placed on how we communicated, how we interacted, just to make sure that I wasn't getting an advantage in the competition.
So I saw this earlier today. I'd like for you to share the worst type of competition that you had on MasterChef when you talk about the team.
Yes, the most memorable, difficult challenge I went through was the sushi challenge, where it was a team challenge. It was a tag team challenge. So you're paired up with a partner, and you have to complete a dish or a few dishes, a cohesive, bunch of dishes. In our case, it was sushi. So we had to make like a roll, we had to make tempura, we had to make some nigiri or sushi pieces. And these were things that we had to serve up, and they had to look like what we were presented at the beginning as the demonstration. And if you can imagine, not being able to see when you're trying to tag team with a partner is very, very difficult because, when it's not my turn, I'm standing on the sidelines and then my partner is preparing the dish. And then when the judges yell that we have to switch, I have to go in and pick up right where she left off. But of course, because it's someone else that cooked, I don't know where she left everything. I don't know where she put the knife. I don't know at what part she left off at in the cooking process or the plating process. So that was very, very, very challenging. I knew that she would be at a disadvantage being paired with me. And I was really prepared to go home that day or just suggest that I be the one that's sent home. But in that challenge, I remember our team was the worst performing one, but the judges ended up sending her home, which really broke my heart.
How big is this workspace that you have when you're doing the show? Just how many feet would you
I
say?
mean, imagine it's just, imagine in the middle, there's a 4-burner stove from what I remember that's attached to an oven. And on each side, there's a little small counter space. So that's really all you're working with. And underneath, there are some cabinets that might have like mixing bowls or whatever. But, there's communal sinks. So you have to like share a sink with another contestant. And the pantry is just off in a different area with all of the food or with all of the other bigger equipment. So it's really not that big at all.
And of course, you were on season 3, which was in 2012. I think I remember that
Yes,
you
that's right.
did the competition. So it moves us along to where you are now. And so I understand that you have a couple of different restaurants in the Houston area. Tell me about those.
I do. So I am from Houston. I was raised here in Houston. I would say I'm a Houston hometown gal. I have two restaurants here. The first one is called the Blind Goat, and it is named that way because I'm known as the blind cook, but my Eastern zodiac sign is the goat. I was born the year of the goat, so I called it the Blind Goat because I wanted a fun and whimsical name to represent the brand and the experience at the Blind Goat. And it is a modern Vietnamese eatery. So it's casual, but we pride ourselves on our hospitality and our customer service and our food and our craft cocktail program. So it's really a place where I want it to be a neighborhood staple where people can come every day just to meet up their coworkers or their friends after work for a drink. Or it's also special enough for an anniversary celebration or a birthday party or whatnot. So I really wanted to encompass like it's a place where all people feel welcome, no matter what they're celebrating or if they just want to hang out, just have good food, good drink, good conversation. So that's the Blind Goat. And in the same parking lot, actually, I have a small drive-through standalone sandwich shop, and that one is called Stuffed Belly. And after many years of doing Vietnamese food, which is what I was known for because that's what I cooked a lot of on MasterChef, I was ready to exercise a different culinary creative muscle, which was my love for sandwiches and American food because, I grew up eating a lot of Vietnamese food, but I was born and raised in America. So I obviously grew up eating a lot of American comfort foods as well. Something I love about sandwiches is I feel like they're easy, they're comfort food, they're what I crave after I get my treatments at the hospital. So they're just all around good things that a lot of people all over the world can relate to. So we do some classic American sandwiches and burgers there, but we do some of them with a creative twist. So there are certain classics like your egg salad or your tuna salad, but we add potato chips to make it add to the crunch. And then our most popular would be the smash burger, which we do pretty simply. It's potato bun, two smashed all beef patties, pickles, caramelized onions, and American cheese because that's the best cheese on a burger for the way it
Sounds
melts.
delicious to me. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, and a stuffed sauce, which is like a sauce we make in house that's a little bit sweet, a little bit spicy, a little bit tangy. And then we do like a version of the patty melt, which is very much a Southern thing. It's we just do everything that pretty much comes on a burger, but an extra slice of provolone cheese, and it's on Texas toast that's grilled. So we have like hot sandwiches, cold sandwiches, but it's like a little drive-through, and it's really quick and easy and a lower price point, especially for a lot of teens and young adults and families that come in with all their kids.
So Houston is huge. For someone who's never been to Houston before, it's huge. It's like being in Los Angeles, right? So what
Almost,
part
yes.
of Houston are your restaurants actually in?
Yeah, if you anyone who knows Houston, we're in Spring Branch. If you're not from Houston, then you would have no idea what that is. But we are right outside of what is called the Loop or the 610 Loop. So everything in Houston, if it's inside the Loop, it's kind of considered like inside the city, the Houston proper. Right outside of that, I'm still in Houston proper, but we're right outside of that loop. So we're not quite the suburbs, but we're not like inner city. So the neighborhood that I'm in, actually, I moved to this neighborhood a few years ago during the pandemic with my husband. We used to live inside the loop where, things were a little more congested. Although it was a really fun and hip place to live, we just, everything was just getting expensive. The roads were small, parking was difficult because Houston is very much a commuter city. So we were walking our dog every day during the pandemic, and we were spending a lot of time at home. And we're just like, we just need more like outdoor space. So we moved into Spring Branch, where now it is quite a popular neighborhood for a lot of restaurants and people moving here. It's people that want more space but don't want to be quite far out in the suburbs. So that's where we're at, a little bit west of central Houston.
So how do you decide, especially for the Blind Goat, how do you decide what goes on the menu? And because you say that menu is all constantly changing, and
Yeah.
so how do you decide?
Well, it really comes down to what are things that I'm excited to serve. And then when you have that opening menu, you start seeing like what becomes popular. So you can't really take away the most popular dishes because you don't want to upset your regular guests that come in wanting that all the time. But at the same time, it's considered a chef-driven restaurant. So you want to keep updating the menu to keep things fresh, to keep people wanting to come back and try your new creations. So it's really thinking about what's in season, what's available, what ingredients are you already using on the menu that you could cross utilize in another dish, what people are excited about, what's trendy, just different food trends, all of these kinds of things. And then also understanding what your market is demanding or asking for, or personally as a chef, what you're excited to cook or try out, or what new ingredient do you want to showcase. All of these factors will go into what dish you decide to put on the menu.
Now, I know you don't actually do any of the cooking in your restaurant, but are there gadgets that you find in your personal life that you enjoy cooking with?
I mean, yes, I would say, I mean, these are devices that I think even sighted people use. So my husband who's sighted will use it, but like a smart home device to set timers for things that you put in the oven, or timers for things you're simmering on the stove, or to convert measurements from metric to standard or vice versa. And, I have a smartphone and a smart tablet and all that I put all my recipes on there. So it's easy for me to navigate through. As far as actual cooking tools, I would just say I'm extremely organized and I color coordinate things, and I take advantage of color contrast in my kitchen. So, for example, my home kitchen, my counters are light colored. So I use dark colored cutting board so that I can see the outline of my cutting board. All my knives are on a magnetic strip hanging on the wall in the order of smallest to largest knife. So I know immediately, like if I just count down the line, which knife I'm grabbing. So in my spice drawer is all organized, and I use an app called Our Groceries on my iPhone that not only do I use it to make grocery shopping lists, but I have a list on there called Pantry or Home Kitchen, and that will list everything I have in my pantry, my spice drawer, my fridge, my freezer, so that I can meal plan and I know exactly what I have. So a sighted person can just open their fridge or their freezer or their pantry and see everything they've got. But us visually impaired folks, like, we need a different system. So I, have my spice drawer all alphabetized, and I can refer to our groceries app to see or to listen to what spices I do have already in the house in alphabetical order. So I just count down the line, like maybe allspice is the first spice. So I know if I grab the first jar on the left in the drawer, then it's allspice. So those are kind of the small little tips and tricks that I use to be a visually impaired cook at home.
So, a couple of things that a lot of individuals, I mean, not just visually impaired individuals, but people in general have trouble with sometimes. Do you have any tips or tricks on browning, for example, browning meats?
I would say it's mostly by texture and smell. It's funny because one of my best friends, she's sighted and she did not know how to brown meat. And I remember she called me because she was trying to say, like, this instruction says brown ground beef. I don't know how to
Mm-hmm.
do that. But it really comes to experience. So the more you do it, the more you understand what that means. So raw, for example, let's take ground beef or ground meat as an example. When it's raw, uh, it's very soft and it makes a certain noise when you're like squishing it. And then let's say you get it in the pan that's hot with some oil. Then you start like hearing the sear. You chop it up with a spatula, and then you can feel the proteins start seizing up and it becomes a little bit stiffer. So it's not as mushy, it's not as soft, it starts getting a little bit more solid. And that's when you know the browning process has begun. And then you'll know if it gets too far when it becomes really hard and then you start smelling the burning smell. So you don't want to get to that point. So browning is kind of like a sweet spot, but it's quite forgiving. So the more you do it, I would say the better you get at anything in life.
Any tips or tricks for mixing? Because that's another challenge that a lot of people have, because sometimes it's hard to tell when all the ingredients have dissolved into this universal color.
That is a good one. I mean, even to this day, sometimes when I bake cookies, my husband will be like, "You didn't mix this well," because I just got a chunk of raw flour or something.
or
So I think
butter.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think the trick to that is really, I mean, I cook with my hands. I think your sense of touch is extremely important in the kitchen when you can't see. I'll use a stand mixer, and then, I keep using a rubber spatula to push everything down so that it keeps getting mixed and caught in the mixing blade. So it's, and then not everything is perfect, but for example, if you want to like mix in spices or something, or powdered sugar or flour or something, you can often use a sifter or a very fine mesh sieve, and then that will help break big clumps apart of things and help it mix in a little bit more evenly. And then at that point you can use like a whisk or whatnot to just try to mix everything as best as you can. But just know that blind cooking will not always be perfect, but neither is sighted cooking. So the more you do it, the better you get at it. But there are all kinds of tricks to try to get a most homogeneous mixed substance as you can.
What about glaze or icing or something like that?
Ooh, I tend to not even mess with that. I mean, I think the fun of actually being visually impaired is sometimes if you ice a cake or cupcakes and it doesn't look perfect, but it's you. It's very representative of who you are. And I really get tickled and I find that fun because yes, it could be amazing if you're visually impaired and you ice a cake perfectly, but if it's not true to you, like I think it's fun to have a cake that's not perfect. I think it really speaks to who we are, and we need to learn to laugh at ourselves and have more humor about ourselves and not strive for perfection so much, but just strive for authenticity and be true to yourself.
Seems like one of the things that you were very talented at is making your food look super presentable, as far as so I mean that's a talent in itself because we may make one dish at a time and maybe this but you have this knack of not only making it presentable but combining all these different types of ingredients together to really create a medley rather than just one single note, so to speak. So,
Or yeah, I think plating is something that you just also learn over time. And I wouldn't say I'm the best at presentation, but I tend, because I've had vision for some of my life, I tend to picture things in my head, in my imagination before I go about trying to recreate it with my hands or my fingers. And there are like little things that I know about presentation or just design in general. And you want contrasting of colors, you want height for visual interest. There's also some things that like artists or photographers use where it's about like white space or using the blank area on a canvas. So you don't want to overcrowd a plate. You think of your plate or your bowl as your empty canvas, and you don't want to overcrowd it too much. But so, perhaps you divide it into three sections and then you maybe just fill like one or two sections or something like that. So there's all different ways to think about plating, and it's very much a creative process.
so one quick going back here to your MasterChef days, what made you decide to have the braised pork belly as your final dish?
Oh, that's an easy one. So it was actually the dish that I cooked in my very, very first audition, the one that wasn't even on television. So it's the open call audition where MasterChef producers travel around the country and do an open call audition. So I actually made the pork belly for my first audition in Austin. And then I ended up wanting to cook it again for my finale because it felt it felt full circle coming back to the first dish I cooked for the producers to try that led me to the next step, which led me onto the show. And then two, it is the most quintessential dish of my childhood that I remember my mom cooking the most. She was a working mom, very busy. We didn't grow up with a lot of money. So at that time, pork belly or pork shoulder was an inexpensive cut of meat that we could afford. It didn't have a lot of ingredients. It was quick to prep. You just slow braise it for a long time. And then you have this dish that can feed you and your family for days because they can be frozen. It can hold well in the fridge, and it actually tastes better with time. So the braised pork belly, or in Vietnamese is called thịt kho, was a dish that I ate very, very often. So it's so studded in the memory of my youth that I wanted to pay tribute to my mom, who is had passed away when I was young and didn't teach me how to cook anything. Unfortunately, before she passed away, I wanted to honor her and her memory by cooking and recreating that dish that I grew up eating of hers.
It's awesome. I know that the last question, I know that you enjoy writing. And is there an author or a book that you recommend, perhaps one that inspires you?
Oh man. I would
It could
say
be a kid's book even if you wanted to, because,
sure. No, I think the first one that comes to mind when you ask me that question, I'm going to go with my gut. One of my favorite books from even before when I was in grad school, all through grad school, was Life of Pi by Jan Martel. The book is better than the movie, although the movie's pretty good too. But the book, I think I listened to it when I was losing my vision. And not only is it a really interesting and fun adventure story that keeps me, quote unquote, turning the page, but there are also deeper metaphors in the book that I think really speak to life. So I think Life of Pi would be one of my favorite inspiring books.
Well, with that, I would sincerely like to thank you for sharing your insight with us today. To you, this might be just another interview, but for us, it's a momentous occasion. And I
Thank you,
urge
Jerry.
everyone, true. This will be the highlight of the year, believe me.
Thanks, Jerry. Appreciate it. I'm glad I could bring a little sunshine into y'all's lives.
Thank you so much. And I urge everyone to check out your book and check out the blindcook.com for more about what's going on in Christine's life. And also, I believe there may be another book coming out in the near future. So that'll be something for all of us to look forward to.
Yeah, I'm working on a second cookbook, so hopefully that all goes well and that'll be published. I think it'll take some time because I haven't finished writing it, but I'm talking about it, and I'm thinking about it, so it'll happen.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Christine.
Thanks, Jerry.
The book is called Recipes from My Home Kitchen. Try that again. Recipes from My Home Kitchen, Asian and American Comfort Food, from the winner of MasterChef Season 3. It's available both in audio at DB 76676 and in Braille, which is BR 20085. It is also available from Bookshare, and it's not available on Audible. Christine's website is theblindcook.com, and you can also catch, I think all the episodes are there from Season 3. You can watch them free of charge on YouTube. But you may have to when you do your YouTube search, you will have to say MasterChef Season 3, Episode 1, and so forth and so on. And MasterChef is one word.
Would you like to get the Technology User Group presentation every month with little effort? Just subscribe to the Maryland State Library Agency podcast using your favorite podcast catcher. Then each month you will automatically receive informative and inspiring presentation. Remember, you can also listen on your smartphone or speaker. Say something like, Alexa, play Maryland State Library Agency podcast.
This has been a presentation of the Maryland State Library Agency. For links to additional resources provided by today's presenter, please visit the show notes. For more information on MSLA or the Maryland State Library for the Blind and Print Disabled, visit marylandlibraries.org.